There's no era of Disney movies more iconic than the Renaissance era. From The Little Mermaid to Tarzan, the 90s had Disney cranking out nothing but absolute bangers. And with movies we can enjoy over and over again come plenty of theories to keep discussions fresh. So today we're taking a look at all the most prominent ones we could find, from those that are plausible to the ones that are downright crazy. We'll kick things off with the movie that many fans credit with saving Disney from sheer destruction. First up is The Little Mermaid. The Seven Sea Sisters. Easily one of the most unproblematic theories in this video is that Ariel and her 6 sisters each represent one of the 7 seas, with Ariel of course being a stand-in for the Red Sea. This holds about as much significance as that classic SpongeBob characters represent the 7 deadly sins theory, which is to say it doesn't really mean that much. It's more of a cute detail than anything else. Don't touch that dial though, we're gonna get way weirder, believe me. Speaking of setting, one of the most interesting theories from a world-building standpoint is that the city of Atlantica is actually part of Neverland from Peter Pan. After all, they both have mermaids, magic, and a bunch of kids who want to break the boundaries of their natural habitats. Of course, if this were true, it probably wouldn't be so close to dry land. If it were, I don't think Peter would need to resort to mass kidnappings to make friends, if that were the case. King Triton is for the coral reefs. It's not the most family-friendly theory, but one that a lot of fans go back to is that King Triton has been swinging his trident a little too much, and that, as a result, each of his daughters has a different mother. It would explain why Ariel is clearly the favorite child, despite being the youngest, which would usually make her the least likely to inherit the throne. But since she's the only one who adopted most of her mother's physical traits, it could be that he sees in her the last remnants of her mother, who tragically died years prior.
Do you think I was too hard on her? Definitely not.
Yeah, died. That's it, died. What is this, a crossover graveyard? If there's one thing Disney fans love to do, it's attempting to connect their favorite movies together any way they possibly can, like a spider web that no amount of rain can wash out. As unprovable as most of those theories are, though, they're still pretty neat. Like this theory that poses the idea that Ariel's favorite shipwreck hangout is actually the ship that sank along with Anna and Elsa's parents in Frozen. It's a morbid thought, and not really something we can prove or disprove, especially since the ships only look somewhat similar. But then again, any way you slice it, it's not like any shipwreck went down without someone dying, right? Who are we to conclude whose corpses are down there? Officiating is a hard job. One of the silliest theories surrounding The Little Mermaid is in a blink and you'll miss it scene during Prince Eric's would-be wedding to Vanessa, aka Ursula. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the priest officiating the wedding is a little too excited to see the bride-to-be at first glance, but worry not, the people behind the film have gone on record saying that's just one of his knobby little knees poking out, and even if it weren't, come on guys, really, the priest has needs too.
How long, lucky boy?
It's not like he's singing a whole villain song about how he's gonna burn down the venue unless she marries him. Prince Eric. Okay, there's been plenty of discourse over the age gaps between classic Disney princesses and their princes. Some are pretty darn egregious, like the 30-year-old prince and the unconscious 14-year-old girl in Snow White. So naturally, hearing that Ariel is only 16 years old might have raised some eyebrows in Prince Eric's direction. But for any Eric fans out there, worry not, he's only 18, so you can turn off all those police sirens. Seriously, they're really distracting. Stop. Speaking of sirens, though, sirens are one of the most interesting magical creatures in Greek mythology. Basically, they pose as attractive women and use their magical voices to lure unsuspecting sailors to certain doom. The question, though, is whether or not such methods would work on a prince. This theory indicates that Ariel, by complete accident, seduced Eric not through natural charm, but through inadvertently using a siren song that brainwashed him. That would definitely explain why he fell so hard so quickly and basically dropped everything else in his life to go make out with some girl he saw in the ocean. But then again, the fact that this is a Disney movie would explain that even easier. In this economy, it doesn't take too much of a financial expert to realize that Prince Eric's economy would have suffered greatly from his love for Ariel. We can see throughout the movie that fishermen are in no short supply, which naturally would make things awkward between Eric and his wife, who has lived among fish her whole life. It stands to reason that fishing might be outlawed by the new princess, which would also explain why her daughter is so unpopular. Not just for being weird, but for inadvertently causing Papa to lose his job at the docks. It's not exactly the focus of the movie, but it's something to watch out for. Remember guys, before you marry a girl you found singing in the ocean, be sure to consider how it will affect the economy. Ursa-lesbian. One of the more interesting theories about Ursula is that her human persona, Vanessa, is based on a human woman she once knew, and perhaps loved? Maybe Ariel isn't the only one who is desperate for finding love with one of those two-legged weirdos.
And don't underestimate the importance of body language.
There's really not much evidence for this one, save for sheer speculation, but there's one Ursula theory in particular that earned a more satisfying conclusion. Vindication! Say what you will about the live-action Disney remakes, but they have given us some good stuff. For example, in the live-action remake of The Little Mermaid, we finally have full confirmation that Ursula is Triton's sister, a notion that was heavily implied in the original movie, and even straight up stated in earlier drafts of the script. It would explain why she wanted Ariel's voice specifically too, seeing as to how she would have been next in line for the throne were it not for Neptune's golden or red child. You know, she and Scar would have actually gotten along great. From under the sea to just under, next up we have the rescuers down under. Percival McLeach is a serial killer. This movie isn't as ripe for discussion as others from the Renaissance era of Disney movies, but TV tropes can still be counted on for a couple of stray fan theories surrounding it. One of the most plausible of the bunch is that Percival McLeach, the movie's main antagonist, is a serial killer on top of a poacher.
No more Mr. Nice Guy.
It would explain how he gets away with so many egregious crimes, from the obvious poaching to the added charges of kidnapping, torture, and attempted child murder. Morally, it wouldn't be a stretch at all, but even from an objective standpoint, note the scene where he prepares to feed young Cody to the alligators. With how quickly they react to seeing him, it's almost like they've come to associate McLeach and his crane with feeding time.
They like it when you use live bait.
And what's more, a report on the radio describes the gators claiming another victim.
His backpack was found near Crocodile Falls, and local rangers believe he was yet another victim of crocodile attack.
As if the guy weren't scary enough already, jeez. Okay, back to the goofy stuff. Another user suggests that the movie's main human protagonist, Cody, is actually Cody Martin from The Sweet Life on Deck. Why, you ask? Well, they're both blonde and named Cody. Okay, to give this theorist some credit, it would explain why Cody doesn't have a trace of an Australian accent, but you'd think him having a twin brother would have come up at least once throughout the movie, right? You know, Zach? Did they clone him at some point? All right, before I have an aneurysm trying to figure that one out, let's talk about Beauty and the Beast. Typical blonde slander. You've heard of the dumb blonde stereotype, right? Well, it could be worse. Now, how about prostitute blonde stereotype? It's easy enough to forget the trio of blonde ladies fawning over Gaston, but when you do remember them, you can remember them being called the Bimbettes. Yeah, this one might seem like more of an Easter egg than a theory, and honestly, if there's anyone who would 100% be down to pay 3 women to follow him around and fawn over him, it is Gaston. Let's get symbolic. Gaston bears some more similarities to the titular beast than you might expect. Not only are they both tall, blue-eyed brutes, they're also both self-centered, cruel narcissists.
Picture this. A rustic hunting lodge, my latest kill roasting on the fire, and my little wife massaging my feet.
The main difference is that the beast was able to change through the magical power of love. It's been said as a result that Gaston is a dark foil of the prince, imagining how awful he could have become if he'd never been humbled and turned into the beast. Crazy old Maurice. One of the less fun theories we have to discuss today concerns Belle's father, Maurice, a sort of brilliant inventor with a forgetful streak and a reputation as the crazy old dude.
Easy old Maurice. He's always good for a laugh.
Many fans speculate that this poor guy isn't just some nut job, but rather a man suffering from early onset Alzheimer's disease. This theory is supported, among other things, by his inconsistent memory, the way his daughter very sweetly interacts with him, almost like she's talking to a little child.
And become a world-famous inventor.
You really believe that?
And the fact that even Gaston acknowledges that he isn't entirely up to snuff in the brains department. It's conflicted, however, by the fact that, well, that log cutting machine looks really well made, actually.
Can't you see he's sick?
Seriously, I'm fairly sure Alzheimer's would prevent that, right? Chip off the old beast. This is one of the most complicated theories of the day. Basically, it implies that Chip, the little teacup dude, is actually the illegitimate son of the beast. So, okay, strap in with me for this. Most fans agree that when the beast was cursed, he was either 10 to 11 years old or 20 to 21 years old. If you believe the former, then this theory is incredibly creepy. But if you believe the latter, which is supported by the fact that he has a young adult portrait of himself in the castle, then it stands to reason that the young, ill-mannered prince would have slept with more than his fair share of women, perhaps fathering 1 or 2 or 10 illegitimate children. Chip's human form does look a little bit similar to Prince Adam, whereas Mrs. Potts doesn't exactly look like she's at the usual childbearing age. Of course, you could also take this theory to some even crazier places, like implying that the enchantress was the prince's scorned lover, her, or that he and Mrs. Potts had a not-so-professional relationship going on. In any case, he's definitely leaving some of his responsibility up to the hired help. But one thing's for sure. Actually, I have nothing. This one's just confusing. Alternative explanation. That said, if you do think the Beast was a kid when he was cursed, and hopefully furthermore that Chip is not his son, then another theory to explain that adult portrait is that the portrait is made of magic and ages alongside Beast, showing what he would look like if he were still human. If you think that's a stretch, just consider the idea that the villagers are stuck in a time loop, another theory often brought up to support this other theory. Also, consider the fact that this movie has talking teacups and candles in it, so thinking too hard will only hurt you.
When I was a lad, I traumatized 4 dozen kids.
Fitting into the same unprovable shower thought line of thinking is the idea that the infamous hunter who killed Bambi's mother was none other than Gaston.
Take a look at my trophies.
Maybe some other time.
A theory supported by little other than the fact that they're both human men that like hunting, and that only a jerk like Gaston could orphan such a young deer like that. Gaston. Before the live-action retelling confirmed that Le Fou was gay, because, we totally couldn't tell that, plenty of fans suspected that the narcissistic Gaston was a gay man putting on a straight facade, flirting with Belle, a woman with zero interest in him, so he could keep the ruse going without compromising his gay nature. Of course, if this were true, I doubt he would have gone so hard to make Belle his wife. That really feels more like a conspiracy theory than anything else, but then again, Gaston does seem to be pretty in love with himself, and himself is a guy, so maybe they're onto something here. The West Wing.
What's in the West?
It's forbidden.
While we know that on the surface, the Beast wants to keep Belle away from the West Wing so she won't see the truth about him and his curse, nor jeopardize his chances of being freed from it.
I warned you never to come here.
I didn't mean any harm.
Do you realize what you could have done?
His short temper suggests that a withering rose isn't the only thing he's hiding in there from her. Rather, some fans speculate that the West Wing is full of corpses from the Beast's worst outbursts. If there's any evidence against this, it's probably the fact that the Beast wasn't an outright bad person, not to the core at least, and I doubt Belle would have overlooked him being a mass murderer had the corpses been revealed after the curse was lifted. Which makes you wonder, one of the most common theories about this movie is that Belle was not the Beast's first hostage.
Voila! Oh, you look so
Stupid.
Honestly, this one just makes too much logical sense to not be true. The guy was tasked with breaking a curse with the power of true love, and he just so happens to have the personality of an arrogant, entitled prince and the body of a monstrous beast. It makes sense that he'd try to repeatedly force women to fall for him, which explains why he both lost all hope and why he was moved by Belle, who was so kind that she volunteered to stay. This was probably the first time anyone volunteered to stay in the Beast's castle. Gee, I wonder why. So naturally, it would be a good vehicle for his change. Or you could just chalk it up to Belle having Stockholm Syndrome, if you want to take the magic out of it. Now, we could show you the world, but instead, we're just going to show you some interesting theories about Aladdin. The Peddler. This one is the most iconic theory about Aladdin, and one of the ones that's been confirmed, due to them sharing the same voice actor and framing the whole story of the movie.
Please, come closer.
Too close, a little too close.
There.
It's been long speculated that the peddler from the beginning of the movie is the genie in disguise, a theory that was originally going to be revealed during the ending but was sadly scrapped.
Like I told you, things are never quite what they seem. Are they?
They think he's rather tasty. The opening scene of the movie shows off Aladdin as a guy with heart and some serious favor with the ladies, apparently. When he busts into what seems to be a brothel, the ladies are all too happy to see what I can only assume is a frequent customer of theirs. So you can't afford bread, Aladdin, but you can afford hookers?
Brilliant.
For shame. Call up Dave Ramsey and get your budget in order. Prince Ali, subliminal is he. In perhaps the absolute weirdest case of mishearing dialogue in cinematic history, one particular scene of the movie had fans believing that Aladdin was asking some good teenagers to take off their clothes.
One good teenagers, take off their clothes. Down, kid.
Thankfully, this one falls into the straight-up debunked category, as it's been confirmed that he was talking to Raja and saying something like, "Good kitty, take off and go." It's also worth noting that Aladdin is a teenager himself, so he could have been easily talking to himself, in which case I'd honestly just be kind of worried for his mental state, but either way, he's not a predator, and thus my childhood is spared for at least one more day. On today's episode of Extreme Overthinking, if it seems weird that Princess Jasmine has a pet tiger of all animals, one theory suggests that Jasmine is a witch and that Raja is her familiar.
Then maybe I don't want to be a princess anymore.
Often, witches were said to have feline companions which would act in line with their master's feelings and motives, which would support the idea that neither Raja nor Jasmine herself like the vast majority of her suitors. Where does the aspect of Jasmine having magical powers come into play then? Good question. Ask the random user on Reddit who pitched this theory 5 years ago. Speaking of Reddit theories, another more metaphorical theory holds a bit more weight, and honestly, it's kind of sad. One interpretation of the movie suggests that Aladdin is a metaphor for addiction, and it all ties back to Abu, the proverbial monkey monkey on his back. Think about it. Like addiction, Abu is always with Aladdin at his low points, is constantly getting him into trouble, and is reluctant to do the right thing, and most notoriously, when Aladdin does get his hands on some food, he feeds Abu, i.e. his addiction, before himself. Is it true? Probably not. Is it a really nice illustration of the dangers of substance abuse? Yeah, actually. I mean, just look at how high that magic carpet gets him. He even got Jasmine hooked on it. What a wholesome start to a loving relationship. Apocalypse, eventually. There are surprisingly many theories about a blank Disney movie is post-apocalyptic, but from a not super serious standpoint, Aladdin is one of the most interesting cases in this regard. Like, if the movie is supposedly taking place in the 3rd century, then how can the genie know how to reference so many icons, real and fictional, from the 90s and so on?
All right, Sparky, here's the deal.
A lot of fans have speculated that this movie takes place thousands of years in the future, when society's just starting to rebuild itself after some kind of catastrophic disaster, and those of us who don't wear tinfoil hats everywhere we go just chalk it up to Genie being a source of near-limitless magic. Genie's various crimes. Speaking of the Genie, there's a lot of gray area surrounding this guy. For example, when reading his various rules, he has the oddly specific one that he can't raise the dead, which he reads with a pretty upset vibe about him.
I can't bring people back from the dead. It's not a pretty picture. I don't like doing it.
So, right off the bat, we've got the indication that Genie is responsible for some kind of zombie apocalypse, and it doesn't stop there. But have you thought about the implications? Aladdin's first wish, and the most important one to the plot, was to become a prince. But as some fans have observed, notice that he specifically wishes to become a prince, not become like one, but to flat out become one. So, this raises the question, did Genie create an entirely new kingdom for Aladdin to be in line for the throne of, only to wipe it out of existence right away, since nobody had ever heard of Agrabah anyway? But an alternative theory takes the 3rd movie into account, where it's revealed that his father is the king of thieves, naturally making Aladdin the prince of thieves. That's our Genie, nice enough to grant wishes without committing mass genocide. Iago, the true mastermind. It's been argued by some that Iago is the greatest Disney villain sidekick of all time. Those some are indeed correct, but that's neither here nor there. Here's the theory. One of the reasons Iago is such a great sidekick is the fact that he's not just a sidekick, he's an experiment. Think about it, he's smarter than almost the entire ensemble cast, demonstrating good foresight, practical skills, and using his facade as an innocent little parrot to his advantage.
Boy, Jafar's gonna be happy to see you.
Excellent work, Iago.
Go on.
It's worth wondering if Jafar somehow magically increased his pet's intellect and saw him as a useful spy, which would explain why, before his redemption in the sequel, he pretty much always acted like a regular bird, except for when he and Jafar were alone. Jafar, the true hero? Jafar at face value seems like one of the most cut and dry villains in Disney history.
I can't help you. I work for Senior Psychopath now.
But a surprisingly large amount of fans have theorized that he's a misunderstood hero. He's the one really pulling the strings, it seems, given how the Sultan is completely incapable of running a country by himself, and how Jasmine isn't really taken as seriously as she ought to be. If this theory does interest you, you might check out Twisted, an Aladdin musical that tells the story from Jafar's perspective. I won't spoil everything, but let's just say that Jafar's reasoning for trying to overthrow the Sultan and take Jasmine from Aladdin might not be so depraved after all. I mean, it probably is, but it might not be, right? I hope you're all well prepared, because we're moving on to what might be Disney's most beloved movie of all time, The Lion King. Let's get this one out of the way. Okay, the leaves. The pile of leaves that Simba falls onto in one scene, which many fans have noticed lets out a big bunch of dust that spells out the word sex. First of all, if they were going to do this, shouldn't it have been during Can You Feel the Love Tonight? And second of all, this is one theory that's been totally debunked.
I tell ya, Pumbaa, this stinks.
It's confirmed to have been an Easter egg from the special effects team, hence why it says SFX, but with an easily mistakable design. Get out! It's easy to assume that Nala running into Simba later in the film is a result of her going to look for food after Pride Rock was left desolate. It's a reasonable assumption, but one alternative theory suggests that Scar banished Nala, which would explain why, rather than just asking, "Hey Simba, can I eat your adoptive parents?"
She's gonna eat me! Huh?
She instead warns him about how horrendous of a job Scar is doing as the new monarch.
Pumbaa.
But was he, though? Some fans have speculated that Scar's decision to allow the hyenas to have a place in the Pride Lands isn't exactly the destructive decision viewers are led to believe, but rather this is just a natural consequence of the changing seasons. That said, there's one factor this theory ignores, which ironically is the hyenas themselves.
Can't help it. I'm so hungry. I gotta have a wildebeest.
The reason the Circle of Life has lost the majority of its herds is probably because of the little detail that hyenas and lions are both predators.
Scar, there's no food, no water.
Yeah! It's dinner time, and we ain't got no stinking entree.
So it's only natural that no other species would want to stick around when there are two dominant species trying to eat them. Speaking of dominance, ew. So there's a deleted song from the movie called The Madness of King Scar that was later shown in the movie's musical adaptation, one that would have gone into detail on how awful of a king Scar was. This would include his attempts to extend his bloodline, which, as many fans have observed, would have meant mating with lionesses like Sarabi and Nala. You might think that's just too scandalous to be true. After all, when Scar was becoming king, Nala was only a little cub. Surely even he wouldn't sink that low, right?
I am a king. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, the song blatantly has him singing about how she has feminine assets and how he has to make her his.
Nala.
I think I speak for the whole audience when I say, dig in, hyenas. He's all yours. Speaking of hyenas, it's worth wondering how they even survived as long as they did, considering they seem to live in a much more desolate area than the Pride Lands. Some fans have speculated that they were using Scar all along to gain entry to a better home, but given the unimpressive intelligence they display for most of the movie, I don't think there's much of a chance that's true. I do think it's all but confirmed that one morbid theory is true. These guys only survived so long due to cannibalism.
It's not funny, Ed.
In Chuck Brown's comic series starring Scar, we find out that the hyenas would select one of their own as their sustenance for the week. Scar really should have picked his friends more carefully. Simba got lucky. This one's less of a theory and more of an observation. Simba, by all means, should not have been able to defeat Scar in battle. He spent most of his adolescence chilling out in the forest eating bugs with Timon and Pumbaa, whereas Scar is an alpha lion with plenty of hyena allies. But luckily for Simba, Scar's reign brought with it multiple packs of hyenas and a severe drought, one that undoubtedly weakened the ironically unprepared traitor, giving Simba a pretty easy victory.
Simba, I am family.
Timon x Pumbaa, OTP. Wow, there are a lot of gay theories in this video, huh? I guess it's only natural that people would ship Timon and Pumbaa to some extent, though. They both grew up as outcasts, became friends from an early age, and this is the most damning piece of evidence.
Hey, Pumbaa, not in front of the kids.
Oh, sorry.
They decided to take Simba under their wing and basically adopt him when he's exiled. This was most obviously to keep him from, eating them, but it hasn't stopped many people from calling these two a stand-in for gay parents adopting a wayward child.
Time out! Let me get this straight.
Which, I mean, I can't disprove it. That's more like Timon and Pumbaa's business than ours, though. I'm not gonna pry into their relationship. Are Mufasa and Scar really brothers? It's almost a rite of passage for a movie featuring brothers to have a fandom that asks the question, but are they really, though? Lion culture is quite different from human culture, and in one of the most major ways, it's uncommon for a pride to have many more than two males. As far as we know, they're blood brothers who grew up together, but who's to say? I'm sure Scar would just lie about it anyway. Zazu knew. One of the most interesting Lion King theories has to do with one of the more minor characters, Zazu. According to this theory from u/Horace the Badger on Reddit, Zazu is the only one who could have known about Scar's assassination of Mufasa, and as he thought of Simba. He knew about Scar's dissatisfaction with the succession, he knew about his connection to the hyenas, and he knew that Scar suspiciously knew that Simba would be in the gorge right as a stampede occurred. Why else would Scar have Zazu imprisoned while the other animals roamed free?
Must have slipped my mind.
Yes, well, as slippery as your mind is.
Unless Zazu had some information he didn't want getting out.
I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts, dee-dee-dee-dee, there they are, standing in a row.
Don't think too hard. With any movie, taking real-life logic into consideration will usually make things overly confusing, but with The Lion King, which takes place in the plains of Africa, that's especially true. For example, in typical lion prides, there's usually only one male who sleeps with all the other female lions to keep the species nice and populated. If this were true in the Lion King universe, that would mean that Simba and Nala are half-siblings, and it would also mean that the whole Scar trying to get with Simba's mother and girlfriend thing is more likely than we thought, unfortunately. Next up, we have a not-so-historically accurate classic, Pocahontas. Pocahontas is a freaking psychopath. Okay, it's not that extreme, but come on. Even by Disney standards, us grown-up viewers can't help but find it a little bit weird that Pocahontas, a girl with no experience of the outside world, just happens to be the only person in her tribe even remotely willing to give said outside world a chance. There's just one problem, though. Pocahontas is the daughter of the village chief, and that means, in Disney princess language, that she's next in line to rule the throne. Yet, as many fans have pointed out, Pocahontas doesn't really do anything related to leadership and seems to just do her own thing all the time. Some fans have taken this theory a few steps further and speculated that Pocahontas was driven mad by the death of her mother, causing her to become a self-absorbed danger junkie with such hobbies as, riding a log down a waterfall with her best friend, a raccoon. Yet not even a whimsical talking raccoon, she just talks to a regular raccoon.
He wants me to be steady.
The girl's got issues, that's for sure. Speaking of having issues, Governor Ratcliffe, one of the most iconically irredeemable Disney villains out there.
Success will be mine at last.
A guy whose character amounts to nothing more than greed and racism. If you haven't lost all faith in the government, you might wonder how he even became governor at all. Which raises the issue of this next theory. What if Ratcliffe, despite being the main villain of the film, was just bait to start the war? Think about it. The early colonizers wanted gold and land, little else. But it's not like they could openly wage war on native people for that end, right? So what if they sent in a guy who was notorious for being a short-tempered, egotistical douchebag, the type of guy to start a war for no reason other than IDK, man, I just felt like it, XD? There's no redeeming Ratcliffe, to be sure, so the only question left is why they'd trust him with such an important job, especially given how many times he'd apparently failed beforehand. All signs point to him being little more than a scapegoat, but a very highly recommended one, apparently. From the naturally gorgeous land of Native America to the architecturally beautiful land of France, it's time to talk about the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Shared universe confirmed?
Okay, so you've all heard the theory that Disney movies all take place in the same universe, right? Well, what if I told you that this is the movie that finally confirms it? That's right. Tell me, where does Beauty and the Beast take place? France. And where does the Hunchback of Notre Dame take place? Paris. Yeah, just plain Paris, a humble little city inside of France. Truly, this is the most shocking revelation in Disney fandom history, and we can only hope that Walt Disney's frozen head won't be hunting us down after this video's uploaded for revealing the truth. If this is our last ever upload though, well, you know why. Quasimodo, oh no! Solitary confinement is one of the absolute cruelest methods of punishment the world has ever seen.
But remember, Quasimodo, this is your sanctuary.
However introverted you are, you can't be mentally well without some semblance of human contact. So what would happen if, say, you were raised by a verbal abuser who kept you locked in a tower? Well, you'd be Rapunzel, but what if you didn't even have magical healing hair to soothe your mental anguish? Then you'd be a little more like our boy Quasi. And if you don't want to believe they talk by the power of Disney magic, this theory states that Quasimodo's gargoyle friends only talk via his own hallucinations.
We always said you were the cute one.
I thought I was the cute one.
No, you're the fat, stupid one with the big mouth.
It's a theory that's as interesting as it is heartbreaking, but I doubt they'd be able to help fight back against Frollo if that were the case. On that note, I'll propose an alternative theory, and a bit of a happier one. The gargoyles are actually Quasimodo's guardian angels.
Life's not a spectator sport. If watching is all you're gonna do, then you're gonna watch your life go by without you.
Think about it, they encourage him to meet with Esmeralda, help take down Frollo, keep Quasimodo company during his loneliness. These guys did all that they did to keep Quasimodo from losing his mind.
Hey, Quasi!
Congratulations! Got the girls chasing you already.
To make this theory even more satisfying, one other decoration on the cathedral is the one that drops Frollo into the pit of fire he himself created. You can't tell me that isn't divine justice, not to mention the sweet, sweet irony of Quasimodo being closer to God than Frollo ever was. Let's talk about Frollo. Okay, so right off the bat, Frollo is horrible. He's one of the most depraved, horrific, irredeemable characters in any Disney movie, yet at the same time, he's so genuinely human. That's what makes him such a brilliant villain.
Excuse me.
In a way, you can tell that Frollo does want to bring honor to God, though not nearly as much as he wants to bring it to himself. And while that sentient cathedral decoration ended up spelling his doom, one theory suggests that God gave him more than his share of chances. Just look at this one scene from his villain song, Hellfire. Man, isn't it crazy how the moment Frollo prays for help with his temptation, the fire burning before him totally dissipates, and he's immediately told by a soldier shrouded in light that Esmeralda is gone, point blank? It's almost like God answered his prayer, and he could have literally just moved on with his life, but no, you just had to let the horny win, didn't ya? Now that he's fallen the distance from the top of the cathedral to the bottom, let's go the distance to Hercules. A simple connection. With how many princes, princesses, kings, and other royals there are in the world of Disney movies, there's no shortage of attempts to connect this would-be family tree. As it turns out, one is all but confirmed. Hercules and Ariel are cousins, apparently. Okay, so here's how it goes. Hercules is the son of Zeus, right? Okay, and Ariel is the daughter of King Triton. They rule the sky and sea respectively, and the father of King Triton is Poseidon, who just so happens to be the brother of Zeus. You all caught up? No? Great, let's move on. A less simple connection. Of course, a few of the Disney family tree theories are significantly less cut and dry. For example, a surprisingly popular one is that Megara, Hercules' wife, ended up becoming the despicable Mother Gothel from Tangled. No, not cousins or book club partners or anything. They're the same person, apparently.
Oh.
The idea is that when Hercules dies, Megara would fight tooth and nail to obtain immortality to bring him back. Look, I'll be real with you guys. I do not know what the thought process behind this one is. Like, would immortality give her a time machine? And didn't Zeus get immortality at the end of the movie? Or did choosing to stay on Earth come with giving that up? Even if it did mean that, wouldn't Megara be super hesitant to do anything more related to the supernatural, given how she already sold her soul to Hades once and wasn't too fond of the results? This one's just kinda crazy, honestly. Interesting, but crazy. Zeus intended to lose. Zeus is definitely one of the best dads in history. Disney history specifically, and if you're hesitant to believe that, just look at his climactic battle with the Titans. You'd think that Zeus, being the strongest of the Greek gods, would have no trouble slaying them, but every thunderbolt he tosses at them proves super ineffective.
I need more thunderbolts!
Why is that? Well, if this theory is true, it's a pretty simple solution. Zeus wanted to give Hercules a chance to restore his godhood and prove himself a great hero, so he held back and gave him the chance to save his old man.
You're a true hero.
Then, the moment he's freed, he just starts walloping Titans like a blender going up against some little chunks of fruit. Time is racing towards us now, so let's get down to business to talk about Mulan's theories. Shan Yu is a vampire. Wow. Man, okay, we're starting right off with the weird ones this time, aren't we?
Perfect.
This one seems like it'll be one of the wildest of the whole bunch, but honestly, it kinda checks out. Think about it. The guy has gray skin, black and yellow eyes, and sharp fangs. He loves killing people, has an excellent sense of direction, mobility, and superhuman strength, and can communicate effectively with animals to do his bidding.
Besides, the little girl will be missing her doll. We should return it to her.
That's all ignoring the obvious point that there was a deleted scene of Shan Yu's infamous massacre of that village. You definitely can't prove that this monster isn't a vampire, so who knows? A doll worth fighting for. If that scene of the massacred village doesn't already bring you to the brink of tears, get a load of this. Note that it comes right after the Girl Worth Fighting For song, absolute banger by the way, and Mulan, being a straight woman, is the least interested in fantasizing about the ladies. But perhaps there is a girl worth fighting for to Mulan, like, say, the little girl who owned that doll that Mulan placed next to Shang's father's memorial site, just like Shang's most heartbreaking loss was that of his father. Mulan's was those of the little kids who never asked for a war. Okay, can we please get to the funny ones now? By Shang. Okay, that's more like it. I like Li Shang. He's a fun character, striking that nice balance of not super nice and not a total jerk, allowing him to both grow and have us root for him in the meantime. But character depth aside, as with many characters in popular movies, there are plenty of fans more interested in speculating about which way Shang swings his thing. Some fans have observed that Shang might be gay, considering how he seems to start to grow a sense of fondness for Ping before realizing he was a she. In a more comedic sense, you could honestly interpret his sense of betrayal as him being disappointed that she was a woman. The man just wanted a man to make a man out of him. Poor Shang, truly the most tragic character in Disney history. I'll make a simp out of you. Another more lighthearted theory is that Yao, Ling, and Chen Po only befriended Mulan because they, before anyone else, realized that she was a lady. The most obvious reason for this is the fact that, you know, they literally saw her naked. If this is true, it makes it both funny and creepy that they were ready to fight for dominance on top of a rock.
King of the Rock. And there's nothing you girls can do about it.
Oh, yeah? Well, I think Ping and I can take you.
But on the bright side, it also makes it pretty wholesome that these three are the only ones who stuck up for Mulan when she was about to be executed. Those are some real friends right there. Even if not being sexist isn't the highest standard of friendship. No. They have a point. To Mulan, and to me honestly, it seemed pretty cruel for the Chinese Empire to demand a man from every family to be sent to war against the Huns, especially considering some of those families only have elderly men like Mulan's father, Fa Zhou. But what if, and hear me out, they didn't want him to fight? Maybe all they wanted Fa Zhou for was to help Li Shang train his battalion of misfit soldiers. It'd make a lot of sense since Fa Zhou was a highly revered warrior, which Shang's reaction to being told that he'd be training his son also supports. It would also imply that Mulan kind of wasn't doing the honorable thing after all, huh? Okay, let's debunk that. We're not about to let fan theories slander our girl Mulan, so let's fix that theory by looking at a little guy called the Stone Dragon.
Yo, Rocky, wake up! You gotta go fetch Mulan!
That's right, the Great Guardian who was supposed to be sent after Mulan to bring her back from the war, preventing her from dishonoring her family. But if this theory has a leg to stand on, the Great Stone Dragon wasn't silent because of absence or because of a lack of power. Rather, it was silent for the sake of sending Mushu after her.
Go get her? What's the matter with you? After this great stone Humpty Dumpty mess, I'd have to bring her home with a medal to get back in the temple. Wait a minute, that's it. I'll make Mulan a war hero and they'll be begging me to come back to work. That's the master plan.
Helping Mulan to save China and helping Mushu to save, well, his job. Not as major, but still really nice. Mulan is the Stone Dragon. Building off that last one, a lot of fans have reasonably imagined that by saving the country from the Huns, Mulan brought enough honor to her family that she earned the right to become the Stone Dragon. Since her ancestors all have their own little statues to chill out in, it only makes sense that the coolest one would belong to the one with the most daring and effective feat of heroism. If there's there's anyone who's earned the right to be the next mystical guardian of the family or whatever they call it, it's Mulan. They should probably get started on rebuilding that statue, huh? You can lead a horse to father. On the topic of guardians, this one is one of the simplest theories. Disney has a track record with intelligent animal sidekicks, so Khan might not seem like anything special in that regard, but considering all the stuff with ancestors and symbolism and all that jazz in Mulan, a lot of fans have reasonably theorized that Fa Zhou, like his daughter, had his own guardian, Khan the horse. It'd make even more sense considering how often Khan goes out of his way to save Mulan throughout the movie, since, as you might or might not have noticed, he is just a tiny bit bigger than Mushu and that lucky cricket dude. Mushu is trying to kill Mulan. You didn't think we were done with the crazy stuff, did you? Nah, don't worry. This theory suggests that Mushu isn't exactly the friendly helper he says he is, which, I mean, that kind of is true, but this takes it to the next level. The Abstract Nonsense podcast pitched the idea that the Stone Dragon, aka Mushu, wasn't particularly out to protect Mulan, rather, he was only there to regain the family's honor.
Good morning! I will go forth and fetch Mulan!
Even if that meant getting her honorably killed in combat, forging a letter to get her sent to the front lines against the Huns.
My little baby off to destroy people.
Of course, this would completely betray his development as a true friend to Mulan throughout the movie, not to mention the fact that he was fully ready to mess Shang up when he grabbed Mulan by the collar, so we'd prefer to not believe this one. We'd also prefer to not believe that we've already reached the final movie of Disney's Renaissance era, but were we not, Tarzan's theories still offer plenty of wild stuff for us to talk about. Jane and her dad pulled the Ratcliffe. Okay, not exactly that extreme, nowhere near it really, but some fans have noted that while a father-daughter gorilla study trip is normal enough, or explainable enough at least, you have to wonder why they'd bring objects like telescopes, grandfather clocks, and projectors. The answer is simple, according to many viewers. These two wanted to educate the native people about the wonders of modern technology and the big wide world. Or, hear me out, they wanted to educate the gorillas about this. See? You didn't even think about that possibility, did you? But I got you. Tarzan is Anna and Elsa's brother. That's right, more weird family tree stuff. This time we move back to Anna and Elsa's dearly departed parents. This theory speculates that they actually survived, and unable to get back home, they made a new life for themselves in the jungle, having a bouncy baby boy named Tarzan before they met their end by Sabor. There's no concrete evidence for this one, but I will admit they don't look as different as I thought they would. Still though, my gosh, just let the poor couple rest, guys. What's next? They were about to drown, but they struck a deal with Hades to become pain and panic. Oh, I know you aren't actually considering that. Jane is a descendant of Belle. This one is either way more likely or way less likely, depending on how you look at it. You may have noticed that Jane from Tarzan and Belle from Beauty and the Beast both happen to be white ladies with brown hair who wear yellow. They also have the uncanny ability to understand animals, or beasts at least. Wait, there was that one scene where Belle was talking to some sheep about her reading. Yeah, that still works. Anyway, all of that is to say that Jane might just be a descendant of Belle, and you know what? I can't prove that she isn't, so you win. Congratulations. Whoever pitched this theory first on the internet, you let us end with a winner today. Tune in next time when we'll explain to you in detail how Cruella de Vil is Piglet's great aunt.